on board, we want him on board. So we appreciate that.
You don't actually need legislation.
Go ahead. Go ahead.
I wonder, what do you say today to Andrew Mountbatten Windsor, the man formerly known as Prince Andrew?
Well, you know, there's becoming a reckoning in Britain that needs to happen in the United States. A prince lost his title. The ambassador to the United States lost his job. We need to see those same kind of consequences here. As my colleague Rose said, there shouldn't be buildings named after these perpetrators of these heinous crimes. There shouldn't be scholarships named after them. And there needs to be accounting. We've seen tens of thousands of pages released by the Oversight Committee. What we've not seen is a single name. So I implore you to look and see if we have true justice and transparency in here. And the survivors will know when that has happened.
And I do think that Prince Andrew does need to come and testify at our Oversight Committee, and that can be bipartisan. But I share Thomas's view that the urgency that the British people have shown in getting justice needs to inspire an urgency here in America.
You don't need legislation. You don't need legislation.
Go ahead.
You don't need legislation to get the files released. President Trump could just release them today.
Well,
is that frustrating for you? Why isn't he doing that? And also, did you ask him to be here today? It's a really powerful moment, this.
Look, I'll let my colleagues speak. I hope the president meets the survivors. And I hope when he signs the bill, the survivors are there. I don't care if I'm there, Thomas Massie is there, Representative Green's there, but the survivors should be there. But I hope he meets them, because I think if anyone who meets them and sees their emotion will be moved. And my goal is to get justice here. So I hope he will meet them and really hear what's happened and actually take action. But the broader point is, yes, the president could order the Justice Department to release the files, but in a constitutional democracy, what we're supposed to have is Congress says that the files should be released, and then it's not on the whim of any president. Then the Justice Department is compelled to release those files because that's the law of the land.
Let's just take a
Have you spoken to any Republicans in the Senate who are looking to, move this forward?
So Senator Merkley is a Democrat. He's led the exact same legislation that Roe and I introduced in the House. One Republican co-sponsored his bill yesterday, and I have spoken to at least one more who says they will co-sponsor. The important thing about the Senate is that they need not to muck this bill up. There's a lot of attention on here. We've needlessly spent 4 months dragging this out. A duly elected representative, was denied her seat in Congress for 49 days, and it's time to pull the Band-Aid off. The Senate, it may be tempting for them to get cute and to do things that will documents. They are afraid that people will be embarrassed. Well, that's the whole point here. They need to be brought to justice, and embarrassment is no reason to stop it. So the Senate, John Thune, it's up to him. He needs to bring this to the floor of the Senate, and I think the vote today will show that in the House.
And the president, look, the president has said he would sign the bill. You're going to get almost a unanimous vote here. So you have the president and a unanimous Congress believing that this protects the survivors and is calling for the release. There's no reason for the Senate now to, as Representative Massie puts it, muck around with it. They need to put it up, have a vote, have the president sign it. If there's any further protections, they can do that through the DOJ process. But what they should not do is delay a vote on a bill that the House is going to vote overwhelmingly for and that the president supports.
On the release of these files, Congresswoman Green, you raised the question of whether or not the Justice Department will actually release these files. Do you take the president at his word when he says he's going to sign this bill, and do you have confidence that these files will actually be released?
I only take people's actions seriously, no longer words.
And what do you think the president's actions?
And I'll tell you, because I wasn't a Johnny-come-lately to the MAGA train. I was day one 2015, and there's a big difference in those Americans and those that decided to support President Trump later on. And I'll tell you right now, this has been one of the most destructive things to MAGA, is watching the man that we supported early on, 3 elections, for people that stood hours, slept in their cars to go to rallies, have fought for truth and transparency and to hold what we consider a corrupt government accountable. Watching this actually turn into a fight has ripped MAGA apart. And the only thing that will speak to the powerful, courageous women behind me is when action is actually taken to release these files, and the American people won't tolerate any other bullshit. That's where we are today. Thank you.
Go ahead. 2 more questions and then we're around all day.
Is this a watershed? How would you sum up today in terms of your battle to get to the truth?
I would say that these survivors have been fighting for decades, and they finally are being heard by the American people, and we're finally going to have a reckoning for this Epstein class that has gotten away with horrific things. Look, I grew up in Bucks County, Pennsylvania. People went to church, they played Little League, they went to their neighbors for barbecue. They didn't go to a rape island and abuse young girls or traffic young girls. And people with extreme wealth have thought that the laws don't apply to them, and their culture is totally out of touch with the values that built America. And finally, we're going to have a reckoning over it.
How worried are you?
Let's take the lady here.
Let me ask you this. You said you wanted this to go straight to the Senate. What message does it send to the survivors behind you if the Senate doesn't act quickly to move this bill forward?
Well, they're not here. They're not going to answer questions, so I'll answer a question. I prefer, actually, it goes straight to the president. He can release these files without the Senate acting. Sometimes they take a long time to get things done. The House figured out a way to take 4 months to get this done. I think it's disrespectful to the survivors if they delay this. There's nothing more important than cleaning out the rot in this country. And this is rot, and it's not a partisan issue. And the senators need to get on this. Yes, the economy is important. Yes, international policy is important, but there's nothing more important than getting to this rot and cleaning it out. They should put it at the top of their agenda.
As you know, there's a provision in the bill already that would allow the DOJ to not release certain information if it would jeopardize an active investigation. And the president just last week ordered his DOJ to conduct an investigation. What makes you think you would actually, if this bill passes, see these files? If the public would see them?
There are 1,000 survivors. They can't open enough investigations to cover up everything that's in these files. And yes, it's true they can try to protect a few certain people or a few certain companies, but those investigations will eventually end. And in the meantime, there's not enough investigations to cover up 1,000 different crimes, 1,000 different rapes, 1,000 different sex trafficking instances. And this is not a moot point, even though they are doing that.
And once this bill is signed into law, any career official at the DOJ or the FBI who does not comply with the law is at legal risk. It's no longer just up to the president.
Look, we could have passed a simple resolution here in the House, and that would have been the end of it. Instead, we chose a very hard path, which is to get legislation, a law passed, which means it has to go to the House, the Senate, and be presented to the president. And that will have the force of law. They will be breaking the law if they do not release these files.
Thank you very much.
The president has fought so hard.
Last question, and then
release of these files. Why do you think he has fought so hard? If he could do it now, why hasn't he done it?
I believe he's trying to protect friends and donors. And by the way, these aren't necessarily Republicans. Once you get to $1 billion, you transcend parties. You just assume you can pay off whatever party is in charge of the White House, whatever party is in charge of the House of Representatives. And this is about those kinds of people. I think he's been trying to protect them. And I think it also incriminates our own government. This is a complete and total failure of the justice system, as the survivors have witnessed here today to us. It incriminates the FBI. It incriminates our intelligence agencies. It incriminates police departments in West Palm Beach. And that's what has been protected by this, either willfully or unknowingly, and it's time to end it.
And I would agree with Representative Marjorie Taylor Greene that what matters now is just the action. I don't speculate on what politicians' motives are or what's in their heart. The point is the American people have spoken, Congress has spoken, release the files. It's time for justice. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
incredible. have Brad Knott, who's a former federal prosecutor, many members on the committee. Andy Biggs is running for governor of Arizona. They're lawyers, and they understand that the way the discharge petition was drafted is haphazard and dangerous. This is why we have been opposed to this point, okay? And I could be here for a long time going through all the details of it, but the big concern we've all had all along is that the House bill, if it's passed in its current form and it was signed into law, it is dangerously flawed. And our problem and our frustration is there's no way for us in the House to amend it or correct these problems because the authors of the discharge will not allow it. And that's one of our great frustrations. Let me just very quickly, we have a legal document that the lawyers, we have all drafted to explain all this, but let me give you five quick, maybe the top 5 concerns about it, and there are more. But as drafted, the discharge petition, it fails to fully protect victim privacy. I'm going to read you an excerpt out of our legal document we put together to explain all this. Congress should give the Attorney General broader authority to redact all the victim information. The discharge doesn't do that. This would prevent the release of information that could be used to unmask victims who have chosen to remain anonymous. Now, you have some very brave women who have come forward and put their names and faces out there and done press conferences and explained that justice is overdue, and our hearts go out to them, and they are heroes. But you have as many as 1,000 women, by some of the accounts, who may be caught up in this. And the vast majority of them have not come forward, probably for obvious reasons. They don't want to be unmasked. But the discharge petition doesn't have adequate protections. It risks re-victimizing those who were trafficked and exploited. And the courts have recognized this concern, by the way. I'll read you a quick excerpt. On August 20th of this year, Judge Richard Berman, the Southern District of New York, issued an order denying the DOJ's request to release Epstein grand jury materials, noting, quote, names and identifying information of victims appear in the subject materials, unquote. Judge Berman then quoted a letter related to the victims' concerns, which stated the following, quote, transparency cannot come at the expense of the very people whom the justice system is. And importantly, the judge quoted a letter from one of the victims. In the proceedings, she is named as Jane Doe 2. She said this is one of the victims, quote, I beg the court to make sure it is of the utmost priority that in any sort of release, all and every detail that could possibly reveal our identities be redacted. The victims of Epstein's evils deserve that protection, and the discharge does not currently provide it. Okay? Number 2, the discharge petition could create new victims, okay? Because it requires the DOJ to release information even in cases where the DOJ or the FBI has already reviewed it and determined it is not credible. It is false information. Doing this and requiring this to come out could ruin the reputations of completely innocent people, such as those who have may just have known Epstein but knew nothing of his crimes, or whose names he exploited. Think of this, innocent people whose names he exploited and used to try to get close to his intended victims. Their names may be in these files, and they had nothing to do with this. And so by just haphazardly releasing it, you're going to destroy their reputations. Releasing information containing the names of innocent people would subject those innocent people to a guilt by association. It would create an entirely new group of victims who have no means to clear their names. That's a concern of Congress, and it should be. It should be. Number 3, the discharge in its current form fails to prohibit the release of child sexual abuse materials. That is a term of art. It's called CSAM, okay? It's defined in the U.S. Code. The discharge is so haphazardly written because, remember, it's just a political exercise for these guys. They don't seem to care about this, but they cited the wrong section of the U.S. Code. So when they say that we don't want child pornography to come out, child sexual abuse materials, of course, we don't want that released. They wrote this thing so quickly that they cited the wrong section. So you know what that means? It means that it doesn't really bestow any real legal authority on the Attorney General to redact those materials. And that would compel the DOJ to release that stuff into the public. Every single person in this room knows that's wrong, and you should stand against it. But that's what the discharge says. Number 4, it jeopardizes the future federal investigations of the United States. Why? Because the discharge only allows the Attorney General to redact limited portions of records that could publicly identify individuals who are promised confidentiality. In this scenario, you're talking about whistleblowers, you're talking about confidential informants who came forward and gave information and evidence in exchange for agreeing to have their their identities not revealed. Violating confidentiality, imagine the chilling effect that would have on future investigations. Who's going to want to come forward if they think Congress can take a political exercise and reveal their identities? Who's going to come talk to prosecutors? It's very dangerous. It would deter future whistleblowers and informants. And the release of that could also publicly reveal the identity, by the way, of undercover law enforcement officers who are working in future operations. Dangerous stuff, and they seem not to care. And by the way, I'm going to remind you again, we went to the authors. We asked the authors of the discharge to change this, and they said jump in the Potomac. All right? Number 5, national security concerns, okay? The discharge requires the Attorney General to release within 30 days, quote, classified information to the maximum extent possible. This ignores the principle that declassification should always rest, and always has rested, with the agency that originated the intelligence. Why? So that they can protect their critical sources and methods. It is incredibly dangerous to demand that officials or employees of the DOJ declassify materials that originated in other agencies, in intelligence agencies. I could go on. I won't be here all morning, but there's a lot of problems. There's also a lot of legal scholars, and I'm among them, who are concerned that that you've got problems with grand jury secrecy. We know Rule 6E of the Federal Rules of Criminal Procedure prohibits the release of grand jury materials, but the way the discharge is drafted, you can make an argument that it requires all that to come out, and that is a serious problem. Grand juries are not adversarial, okay? There's no opportunity there for cross-examination. You can't disprove evidence. You can't challenge the evidence in any way. And if Congress goes in and breaks that seal and just starts releasing sensitive grand jury materials and allegations like that, it raises a risk that the grand jury process will be politicized in the future. And that's a whole other danger that we could talk about all day. I'm gonna wrap this up and just say that Republicans support maximum transparency. We always have. The President of the United States supports maximum transparency. You've heard him say it in his own words. But he has had the same concerns that I've just articulated here, and we've talked about that. All of us have had these concerns, and we understand that we have a responsibility to innocent people and victims that is not properly guarded by the discharge petition. And that's why we're so incensed about that. We've got to make sure that we disclose the names of anybody who aided or conspired in any way with Jeffrey Epstein. But at the same time, you've got to make sure that innocent people are protected. So we have to do this in a way that doesn't violate victim privacy, that doesn't create new victims, that doesn't disclose the names of any whistleblower or informant, that causes the release of grand jury materials or child sexual abuse materials, or undermines our national security. And I think everybody of good conscience and common sense would say, of course you have to do that. But here we are. So the discharge petition got its 218th signature, and it is going to go forward. It is going to pass because it only takes 218. And we know that the Democrats have disregarded all these concerns, and they're going to move it forward anyway. So all the people of good conscience here say, we've registered our concerns, we stated our opposition as long as possible, but we're also for maximum transparency. So what am I to do as a leader in a situation like this? I call my counterpart in the Senate, Leader Thune, and I talked him through this with him and shared our deep concerns. And of course, they share those concerns as well. And so I'm very confident that when this moves forward in the process, if and when it is processed in the Senate, which there's no certainty that that will be, that they will take the time methodically to do what we have not been allowed to do in the House, to amend this discharge petition and to make sure that these protections are there. The authors of the discharge did not allow us to do that here. That's the rules here. But in the Senate, they can correct it. So under that circumstance, because of that, we know there's serious deficiencies. We know that the work of our colleagues in the Senate can address that and will. They're very conscientious and concerned, as we are, about all this. As we've insisted from the very beginning, Republicans are the only party trying to make a material difference in ensuring maximum transparency. Oh, by the way, I'll just tell you, I put the bill on the floor for unanimous consent last Wednesday night. And guess who objected to it? The Democrats, okay? If this is so urgent and they were so concerned about getting this done and seeing justice be done and all that, they would not have blocked the request, okay? This is about politics. They blocked our unanimous consent motion to expedite their bill and made us waste all this additional time so they could have a show vote today. Republicans are ready to get the job done, to move forward, so we can continue to get on to these important issues of dealing with what the American people demand and deserve for us to deal with. And so I want to leave you with this thought. Everybody should think long and hard about who here is acting truthfully, honestly, and in good faith. It is not the Democrat Party that has obfuscated and blatantly lied for the last 4 years about all these things. It is not the Democrats who shut down the government for their own selfish political purposes. It is not the Democrats who blocked the passage of this discharge a week ago because they wanted to have a political moment. It is the Republicans who are acting in good faith, and I believe the American people are going to see that and understand it. I'm going to vote to move this forward. I think it could be close to a unanimous vote because everybody here, all the Republicans, want to go on record to show they're for maximum transparency, but they also want to note that we're demanding that this stuff get corrected before it is ever moved through the process and is completed. I sincerely hope my Democrat colleagues will show the same level of urgency and enthusiasm when it comes to tackling the real issues facing the country that we got to get to, and that's what we really wanted to talk about this morning. Affordability issues are real, and the Democrats themselves created the crisis. Remember, over the last 4 years of the Biden administration, they spent like drunken sailors, and when you throw a bunch of new money into the system, it makes inflation rise, right? Republicans are ready and eager to continue our work to clean up the mess that the Democrats made. We've been doing that already, and we're going to continue to do it. Joining the leadership team this morning to discuss our record-setting success and our continued efforts to bring back affordability, to lower the cost of living, to lower the cost of health care, and have abundant American energy are two of our Republican colleagues who are leading the charge on this issue. And Chairman Brett Guthrie, you'll hear from in a moment, from Energy and Commerce, will speak with you, and Congressman Nick Begich of Alaska, great state of Alaska, is going to address it as well. But I'll first turn it over to our chair of our conference, Lisa McClain.
Thank you. Well, good morning, everybody, and welcome back. So let me start with this. House Republicans will not allow Democrats to distract us, and we will not allow any more obstructions to stop us from doing the work of the American people. Because the American people sent us here to do a job, and that's what we intend to do. The Democrats' shutdown never stopped us. The countless witch hunts against President Trump never stopped us either. And the latest discharge petition is just another Democrat distraction. And I can assure you that won't stop us either. Because the American people actually expect us to do our jobs and not to distract and obstruct. For more than 40 days, Democrats inflicted needless pain on hardworking Americans. And I ask you this, for what? For what did all of these Americans suffer pain? They did it to use the American people's pain as political leverage. And let that sink in for a second. And don't take my word for it, take Catherine Clark's word for that. They used the leverage for $1.5 trillion of a wish list for that Americans' families just simply can't afford. But Democrats, they didn't get a single one of their demands because House Republicans actually stayed united. And now we're taking that momentum into the fight that matters most to the American people. This week, House Republicans will pass consequential bills to make energy costs more affordable. Bills that will lower energy costs for hardworking families, bills that will build on the work that we've achieved to unleash American energy that we passed in the Working Families Tax Cuts. Bills that increase energy production, which you'll hear from Representative Begich and Chairman Guthrie, that cut red tape and drive down prices for every single American. And contrast that to what will the Democrats do? They will almost certainly vote no. But ask yourself why. Why? It's because their radical left won't let them vote yes. So again, Republicans want to bring down energy costs. That's why we will vote yes on the bill. Democrats have a lot of talking points, but their actions will say no. We don't want to bring down energy costs for Americans, and they will vote no. right? So at some point, y'all need to ask the Democrats, when will your actions match your words? Because they don't. The contrast is crystal clear. Republicans will always fight to make energy more affordable for the American people. Now, the Democrats, they'll talk about it, but when the rubber meets the road and they have to vote, watch how they vote. They will absolutely vote no. So while Democrats prioritize the wishes of their radical base, we will keep moving forward with our agenda that actually...
They say we have the brain power. Americans have the brain power. We have the money. We have the capital to invest. What they don't have is access to the energy. And the roadblock to the access of energy is getting permits and being able to move energy forward. So this week we're going to work on two bills. One, this is actually on fuels and gasoline as refineries. We haven't built a new refinery in America since the 1970s. So Bob Latta has a bill to look at our refining capacity. You can drill all the oil you want and have all the gas you want, but if you don't refine it, make it to products people use, then you still have a shortage and limit. So we got a refinery bill before us. And also in the geopolitical, I know that the price of natural gas around the world is important. You know who it's important to? It's important to Russia, because selling natural gas is how they fund their army. And so we also have a provision. Joe Biden, during the height of the invasion of Ukraine, put a ban on natural gas being exported out of our country, and where the Germans were begging for it. I was in a meeting where high-level officials were begging for our liquid natural gas, and so August Pfluger has a bill to reverse any future administration from doing that. We want energy dominance. We had it in the big, beautiful bill. We've had it in almost every committee hearing, and we're going to work together through transportation, Sam Graves, through the chairman, Bruce Westerman, and Natural Resources, and our group on Energy and Commerce to make sure we deliver the energy we need for America to be successful in this geopolitical battle and winning the AI battle. But so people, when they turn their lights on and off in their home, can have affordable power. And one of the great resources of power and one of the most beautiful places in our great country is in Alaska. Even at 46 below zero, in Fort Greely, Alaska, if you happen to go to Northern Warfare School, you can sit around and look around and go, wow, this is a stunningly beautiful place. And so I'm glad to hand this over to my good friend from Alaska, Nick Begich.
Thank you, Chairman. You know, it is cold in Alaska.
It is in
46 below is not as cold as it gets. It can get minus 70 or worse. You know, every product in America is an energy product. Whether you're producing that product, whether you're sending that product to a grocery store, whether you're going to the grocery store to pick up that product, whether you're going to visit family for Thanksgiving, you're expending energy. And if we want to address affordability in this nation, the best way to do that is to address the fundamental cost of energy. If we're going to do that, we've got to produce more of it. And I happen to be from the great state of Alaska, where we do have abundant natural gas, where we do have abundant oil reserves. But in the previous 4 years, under the Biden administration, we were not allowed to access those important resources for the American people. In fact, under Joe Biden, there were more than 70 executive orders and actions that specifically targeted Alaska, preventing us from developing the oil and gas resources of the state and the critical minerals that we're hearing so much about today. Today's bills help unlock the resources of Alaska for the benefit of the American people, and do so in a durable fashion. In the National Petroleum Reserve of Alaska and the 1002 area of our North Slope. That's 20 million acres unlocked for the benefit of the people of this nation. And I want to thank the leadership team who has prioritized affordability in this country again, who understands that affordability begins with resources and our ability to add value to those resources. Alaska is ready to be a part of that solution, and I'm proud today to introduce these bills, get them passed, and send them over to the Senate. Thank you, and I turn it over to our great whip, Emmer.
Thank you. These days, anti-Trump temper tantrums seem to be the Democrat Party's MO. Instead of helping us, Republicans in the House, the President in the White House, and the Senate majority, instead of helping us secure our border, cut taxes, and make life more affordable for the American people, Democrats have shown time and time again that they're more interested in opposing President Trump and his successful agenda at every turn. But their obstruction and partisan games will not deter our efforts to deliver countless wins for the American people. This week, House Republicans are returning to Washington with a packed agenda, full of promises kept. Where the Biden administration and climate alarmists stifled our nation's energy production and caused prices to skyrocket, House Republicans and President Trump are restoring America's energy security and ensuring affordability. Where Democrats put violent criminals above innocent Americans, Republicans are ensuring our communities are safe from dangerous offenders. And where Democrats chase headlines and mislead the public, Republicans are actually pursuing transparency and justice. The contrast could not be more clear. Republicans govern, Democrats obstruct. We already passed the largest middle-class tax cut in American history with absolutely no help from Democrats. And that was just the beginning. Now, as you see, that we're back from this ridiculous, needless shutdown caused by Democrats, we're moving full steam ahead to make up for the days that they have taken away with their delusional shutdown. And with that, I'll turn it over to our leader, Steve Scalise.
Well, thank you, Whip. And it's good to be back. It's good to have the Democrat shutdown ended and the pain, the suffering that went on for way too long finally be over. And now to see the House back doing its business. And, of course, we missed a few weeks, and so we're making up for lost time. We have a very robust schedule this week. As you can see, a full 5-day work week. We're going to be working and having some late-night votes. Today we have 3 vote series going into the night, and our members have rolled up their sleeves and are ready to get back to work, too. The committees are going to be meeting into the night this week and beyond to catch up and get back to focusing on those issues that we've been fighting for this entire Congress, and that is fighting for those families who have been struggling under the failed Biden agenda. All we saw under the Biden and Democrat agenda was higher costs for families, higher inflation, higher interest rates, open borders, chaos around the world. And President Trump has reversed that quickly. As you look at all of the things that this president has done, working with this Congress, We have been focused on fixing the problems that Biden created and then really setting a new course, getting this country back on track, lowering costs for families. You heard Chairman Guthrie and Congressman Begich talk about this great energy agenda that we're continuing to deliver on. Of course, in the working families tax cut, so we had a lot of provisions in that bill, in fact, that Congressman Begich himself brought forward to open up areas in Alaska. I walked the Alaskan pipeline in Section 1002 of the North Slope, and to see all of the ability to produce energy in America that had been shut down under Joe Biden. We couldn't even produce the energy we know we have here in America because of stupid policies by the Biden administration. And we've been reversing that. Many of those provisions that Congressman Begich campaigned on, he already delivered on in the working families tax cut, but there's more to do. And so we're bringing some of those bills to the floor this week. You're going to see the Department of Interior probably this week, hopefully in the next 2 weeks, roll out their 5-year leasing plan for the Gulf of America. Again, something that President Biden shut down that drove investment to foreign countries. We saw billions of dollars of energy investment moving to foreign countries because Biden shut down America. Well, America's open up for business again. And that means more jobs here in America, but really importantly for families, lower energy costs. And energy costs affect everything that we do. When you go to the grocery store, lower energy costs mean lower food costs for families. And so we're going to keep delivering on that agenda. Obviously, this week, it's going to be a very aggressive schedule, and we're going to continue to move bills in the future. Something else the Democrats broke, and we talked about this a lot during the shutdown here at this podium, and that is the health care crisis in America. The current law in health care is the Affordable Care Act. I think everybody would recognize it's unaffordable for millions of American families. And yet they have dumped more families into that plan, and the cost increase are evident. 80% increase in costs for families since Obamacare passed. And yet, as the Affordable Care Act has failed to work for families, Democrats continue to try to shove hundreds of billions of dollars more into that failed program and not giving relief to families, but giving COVID subsidies to insurance companies. That's what Democrats were fighting for. You saw President Trump today saying, one of the things we want to do as Republicans is give those tax credits to families, not to insurance companies like Democrats want to do, but to give it to families. We've been working before the shutdown with our 3 relevant committees, Chairman Guthrie's committee in Energy and Commerce, Chairman Jason Smith in Ways and Means, and Chairman Wahlberg over in Education and Workforce. The 3 committees that work on healthcare policy to focus on legislation that would actually lower costs for families and give families options so they're not trapped in the Unaffordable Care Act policies that drive up their premiums. And so we've brought bills. We had some of those we talked about in the working families tax cuts that didn't make it all the way through the process. We're going to be coming back to that. We moved PBM reform last year, very bipartisan bill that Chuck Schumer sat on because he and Democrats don't want to lower costs for families. We do. And we're going to keep bringing those bills over the next few months. We're working with all of our members. We talked about it again today in conference. But we've been working on it for months. We've been bringing bills to the floor. And Democrats, sadly, have walked away from this because all they want to do is force people into unaffordable products, the Unaffordable Care Act. They want families to have to pay more in premiums because they want a single-payer, government-run health care system. It has failed the American people, and they deserve better, and we're going to deliver better for American families. And finally, today we released the calendar for next year, so I know you're all interested in what that's going to be. We're going to have a very busy agenda next year. We're going to continue to deliver here in this Congress for American families. We've got a lot to do this year, and we're going to be doing a lot more this year. But we're also going to have a very busy agenda next year. Democrats they're in disarray right now as a party, but they've got to decide. They're going to work with us here in this Congress to actually deliver for the American people. Are they going to continue to have, as the Speaker talked about, that Trump derangement syndrome? All they do is wake up every day and say, how can they oppose Donald Trump, no matter what he wants to do? When Donald Trump wants to help families, all they do is wake up and say, what is he doing? And they try to do the opposite because the radical Mandami wing of the party just wants to fight President Trump. Well, that's not where America is. America wants to get results. America believes in common sense. We're going to have a resolution Friday that says we stand up against socialism and the atrocities of it. It's not just the bad policies. It's led to murder all around the world where it's been tried. And they don't teach that history, unfortunately, enough in our schools. And so a lot of young people don't even get exposed to the atrocities of socialism. But we'll surely be talking about it and voting on it this Friday. A pretty easy vote, I think, for most people. Hopefully they say, no, we believe in freedom, opportunity, and we stand against socialism. We're going to have that opportunity this week as well, while we're also focusing on affordability. With that, I'm sure you may have a couple of questions for the Speaker of the House, Mike Johnson.
Thanks, sir.
Speaker Johnson, the president campaigned on this idea of transparency. In the name of transparency, he released the MLK files. In the name of transparency, he released the JFK files. Why not, in the name of transparency, call on the president to just release the full Epstein files? He doesn't even need Congress to have this vote.
Well, the president's made very clear his position over the last few days. His truth post over the weekend and what he said, I mean, he had a press gaggle yesterday, said the same thing. He says release all the files. He's been saying that. What he was counting on and what we were insistent upon is using the processes of Congress, as I've explained here in great detail this morning, to do it in the right way so that it's not haphazard. And Congress has a role to do that. The Oversight Committee is the appropriate place for this to be done, and that is what is happening right now, as you've all seen. And so we preferred that route. And by the way, as I mentioned, that route is more comprehensive than anything the discharge petition would accomplish anyway, because it didn't even mention the Epstein files and some of these other things, I mean the estate files. So we want the process to play out. We want it to be done in the right way. We want to do it in a way that doesn't jeopardize our legal system and doesn't inflict more harm on victims. And the president is resolute on that, as we have been, and that's why we oppose this gambit from the beginning. Yes, Speaker.
Do you acknowledge that by voting for this distribution today, that is a reversal for you, that you could have put this on the floor months ago and may not have even needed to have a discharge petition if you had supported it months ago?
It's not a reversal, as I just explained. We had big problems with the discharge from the moment it was filed. We talked with the authors. There was lots of people that went and pleaded with them to fix it so that everybody could be together, because we've been for maximum transparency. But again, there's a reason you have rules and processes here to ensure that this is not done haphazardly. And I was not satisfied with that. But I've been for maximum transparency from the very beginning. We wanted the process to play out. So yes.
I understand where you're coming from with your concerns with the discharge petition. I also understand your want for transparency in this case. You've been very clear on both those fronts for weeks. So is the reason why you're now deciding to vote for this resolution because President Trump directly said Republicans should vote for this? Because this has been your position all along, and you've made it clear you weren't in support of this resolution.
If and when the discharge reaches the 218th signature, it'll be forced. And the forcing mechanism here prevents the very deliberate, professional, careful manner in which Congress is supposed to do this. I lament that. That's why I'd been opposed to it all along. But having now forced the vote, none of us want to go on record and in any way be accused of not being for maximum transparency. So the only intellectually consistent position to have right now, the only way to ensure that both those things are true at the same time, is to allow for everyone to vote their conscience and to go on record to say, of course we're for maximum transparency. Now, I'll tell you, there's a handful of Republicans, Judiciary Committee members, and a few others who are really struggling, as I have been, about whether or not they could even vote yes today because of this, because we don't have an absolute guarantee that this will be fixed in the Senate. I have a high degree of confidence in that, and that's why. That's why I'll be voting yes today. And I've talked about that in great detail. We had an hour and a half long conference call on Sunday with Judiciary Committee members who are really, really concerned. I mean, they're all for maximum transparency, but they're really, really concerned about protecting the victims, and I am as well, and that's why we have gone through this whole long process. Last one, Olivia.
On that, James Blair today at a Bloomberg event said that they're looking at ways to send millions of Americans checks from tariff dividend revenue, but without Congress being involved. Do you have concerns about them not running that that sort of process through
Well,
Congress?
I'm not sure that's possible, and James Blair and I will have some intense fellowship about that, I'm sure. He's a good friend. We collaborate on strategy all the time, but this is an idea, I think, that makes sense. The President was talking about it as recently as yesterday. I think what I heard him say, and I haven't talked to him about it because he and I have both been so busy the last 24 hours, I'll see him in a little while. But I think what I heard him say yesterday is he's thinking about something maybe midway into next year when the tariff revenue is realized and we can figure out what that looks like. But I think it would require an act of Congress, so we'll have to see how. I'm not sure what's being proposed. So it's sort of a
On your
hypothetical.
doubts about getting specifically into the substance here, reading through the bill though, I guess I'm confused because the bill specifically says that the Attorney General may withhold or redact portions related to child sexual abuse materials as defined in the law, anything jeopardizing federal investigations. It specifically says they can withhold anything containing personal identifiable information of victims' personal medical files. We know the survivors are comfortable with that. All of these things are actually in this bill. That's why I'm
Let me give you an
confused.
example. We could be up here for a long time. I litigated with you.
Let's do it. Like, what specifically is missing?
So the first one you mentioned.
Yeah.
Okay, so here's HRS 581. This is the discharge, okay? It says on page 5, redact anything that depicts or, quote, depicts or contains child sexual abuse material, CSAM, as defined under 18 U.S.C. 2256, okay? All right, so you go to 18 U.S.C. 2256, definitions of the chapter. Nowhere in this section, okay, go look it up, all right, does it contain the definition of child sexual abuse material. So I used to litigate federal cases, and I would challenge statutes in court, okay? The language is very important and very precise. If it's not listed here and this were to become law, child sexual abuse materials are not included. They're not included for redaction, which means the Attorney General and someone there, if they interpret the discharge in the statute that it passes directly and literally, as they're supposed to do, they're required to do under the law, then you're going to have things that would qualify under child sexual abuse materials. You have child pornography included in the distribution of this stuff. We can't go for that.
It's up to the Attorney General.
No, it's not up to it's not up to the Attorney General because the way it's listed in the document. No, it's not. It's not because it doesn't reference the right code section. So we could go through every one of these things. We have had a small army of lawyers going through it because I want to make sure that all of my concerns, because I read it the first time initially and I thought, whoa, this is way out of bounds. We have in fact, we'll put on the speaker.gov. I'll put it on the website here when we leave. You'll see the summary of the legal analysis, and it goes through point by point, and it points to the specific sections in the discharge. Guys, we're not making this up, and you can take it to your counsel at your outlet's offices and have them review it, and they'll tell you the same thing. This should have been done in a much more careful manner, and it was not. And I'm going to point out again, when the authors were asked to fix it, they said they weren't interested in doing that. Okay, why? Because this is a raw and obvious political exercise. Again, I'm just going to leave you with this question. You should go ask them all. If you were so concerned about the Epstein files and protecting the victims, why didn't you do a darn thing about it for the 4 years of the Biden administration? All this stuff was sitting in a warehouse, and nobody said a word about it. They didn't care. Now they're doing it. We all know why. Because they're trying to attack President Trump. That's
ACA
it.
question.
Thank you. Thank you.
These brave survivors, many have carried their trauma for decades, waiting for recognition and an end to their suffering. Families who lost loved ones face the pain of the abuse, the grief of death, and being forced to live without closure. Passing the Epstein Files Transparency Act is essential to honoring survivors' courage and providing long overdue resolution. You can stop the harm by passing this bill to release the files and holding the powerful accountable. Passing the Epstein Files Transparency Act is vital to stop ongoing harm and set the precedent that sexual violence is not tolerated. It is highly likely that some of the perpetrators identified in the files are still committing acts of pedophilia, abuse, and trafficking. Exposing them will finally allow justice to intervene and prevent further victimization. Moreover, not releasing the Epstein files protects the abusers. It prioritizes the perpetrators above your citizens and above victims. The files are expected to reveal individuals in positions of influence who enabled or actively participated in abuse. Currently, major institutions, including our government, our banks, and our companies, may be led by abusers who are named in the Epstein files. Not releasing this information allows them to continue their reign of terror and power and control, increasing their influence and thus increasing their ability to cause more harm and cover up their actions. Releasing the files will dismantle pathways of harm and serve as a warning to others who might seek to exploit their wealth or influence to commit sexual violence. Transparency is a deterrent. Exposing networks of abuse makes it harder for similar systems of exploitation to operate in the shadows. Accountability must extend to the powerful. No one should be allowed to commit sexual violence, no matter how much influence, money, or control they have. Exposing them will uncover systems of abuse that have existed for decades. But acknowledging institutional failures helps us strengthen laws, strengthen policies, and strengthen protections to stop abuse in the future. Without systemic prevention, the same patterns will repeat. Preventing future harm requires breaking the silence that fuels rape culture. Hiding abuse normalizes it, while transparency sends an unmistakable message that sexual violence has consequences no matter who you are. We demand transparency, accountability, and an end to the ongoing harm. Releasing the Epstein files is crucial to protecting our citizens from abuse and upholding our democracy. Epstein's network crossed international lines in trafficking and exploiting victims around the world. In releasing these files, the U.S. will lead by example, strengthening global cooperation against sexual exploitation, ensuring justice is pursued not only in our country, but everywhere that harm has been allowed to flourish. Finally, passing the Epstein Files Transparency Act will uphold the integrity of our democracy. Individuals from both parties are expected to be implicated. Transparency is the only way to demonstrate that justice is not partisan. Justice, transparency, and accountability are the rights of the people. Full disclosure is the only path to restoring public trust and ending the perception of government cover-ups. People must see that elected officials can hold each other accountable. Without this, faith in our government collapses. How can we trust our leaders to pass laws protecting us and our children from sexual violence if they cannot hold each other accountable for committing it? At its core, this is about restoring trust in our justice system and our government and our collective ability to end sexual violence. 69% of Americans believe there is a cover-up, and 86% support releasing all files from the Epstein case. Every day the truth is withheld, public confidence erodes further. We demand the immediate release of the files, with only minimal redactions as is necessary to protect victims and ensure national security. We stand united in calling on Congress to use every tool available, subpoenas, lawsuits, and the swift passage of the Epstein Files Transparency Act. Justice cannot be delayed any longer. Survivors, families, and the American people deserve nothing less than the full truth. Thank you. Now let me be clear on a few points. This letter has the support of 48 organizations calling for immediate action. The Epstein Files Transparency Act is the only sure path to fully releasing these records. This is not a partisan fight. Accountability and transparency must apply to everyone regardless of party. We call on the House and the Senate to swiftly pass the Epstein Files Transparency Act. Now, I am honored to introduce Representative Adelita Grijalva, whose bravery, persistence, and refusal to back down in the face of intense pressure made her an indispensable catalyst for change. Representative Grijalva, thank you for standing with survivors. The podium is yours.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Sorry.
Thank you. Thank you. Especially to the survivors, family members, and advocates who are here today and who have never given up. I also want to thank the organizations who are standing with us today, the Sexual Violence Prevention Association, the National Center on Sexual Exploitation, the National Women's Law Center, and Ultraviolet, and more than 40 other organizations and dozens of survivors calling on Congress to pass the Epstein Files Transparency Act. I'm not standing here because Congress suddenly found courage. I'm standing here because survivors forced Washington to pay attention. Your voices, your persistence, and your truth got us to this moment. Today is about something very simple. The American people deserve the truth. Survivors deserve justice, and no one, no matter how powerful, should be protected by secrecy. This vote, this transparency, and this accountability are long overdue. We know now that thousands of pages released thus far are only the tip of the iceberg. And that matters, because without full transparency, we cannot have justice. Let me be clear, this is not a Democratic issue, this is not a Republican issue, it's a human rights issue. It's a matter of justice. The momentum behind this did not come from politicians, it came from survivors and the public who demanded answers. This is why the discharge petition crossed 218 signatures, despite Speaker Johnson doing everything in his power to prevent this from happening, including calling on an early summer release and delaying my swearing in for 7 weeks. The public pressure cannot stop now. There are going to be people trying to frame this as a hoax, a distraction, or a partisan fight. To them I say, you cannot call it a hoax when real survivors are standing right here. The truth is the truth. No one's name, party, wealth, or fame, or title should prevent the truth from coming out. We don't know yet what every document will show, but that's exactly why they must be released. And while the House will hopefully pass this legislation today, this is just the first step. The bill must pass the Senate, the President must sign it, and even then, the DOJ must implement the law fully and responsibly. So today is a milestone, not the finish line. No one should ever have to fight this hard for the truth, but survivors' courage inspires all of us. Because sunlight is the best disinfectant, and justice cannot survive in the dark. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. As Representative Grijalva just said, this does not stop here. The House is just the first step. It then goes on to the Senate. And with that, I am proud to announce Senator Mark Kelly, who is speaking next. Thank you so much for being here.
Morning, everybody. Well, thank you for being here. I know it takes a lot of courage for the victims of these crimes to speak out. We're here because of you. Together, we are on the edge of doing something important. From Epstein on down, the people who carried out and aided in these horrific crimes thought their wealth and power meant that they would never have to answer for them. They thought the system was rigged for them and not against them, but against their victims. And for a long time, they were right. But we have a chance now to prove them wrong. We have the chance to say that in America, you will be held accountable. Doesn't matter if you're rich. Doesn't matter if you're a Republican or a Democrat. If you hurt people, you will answer for it. This hasn't come easy. Powerful people like the President of the United States and the Speaker of the House have tried very hard to keep the whole truth from coming out. They made Adelita Grijalva wait how long? 2 months?
50 days.
50 days to take her seat in Congress just to delay accountability. And next, we're going to need your help on the other side of the Capitol, making sure that Senate leadership doesn't delay this any further. They need to schedule a vote on this so this can get passed into law. But together, we can get there. Because at the core of this isn't about Congress members or senators or the media. This is about real victims, but also about their families who deserve justice and who deserve accountability. And together, we're going to make this happen. And thank you very much for being here. We've got a little bit more work ahead of us, but my hope is that Leader Thune will do the right thing and bring this legislation to the floor of the Senate and allow a vote. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Next up, we have Representative Robert Garcia.
Well, thank you. First, let me just start by saying that today, especially, all of our thoughts are with every single survivor and victim of Jeffrey Epstein. These are incredible women who, many of whom were abused when they were children at the hands of powerful men in our country, and censoring them and the work that you're all doing should happen every single day as we debate in the Congress what our next steps are as it relates to holding people and the powerful accountable. I, of course, want to thank all the advocacy groups that are here. I especially want to thank Congresswoman Grijalva, who has been a great friend, but also a true leader and champion of ensuring that this process moves forward. I serve as the lead Democrat on our Oversight Committee, and our investigation on the Epstein files is driving a lot of this work. And I'm grateful to Congressman Khanna, Congressman Massie for their incredible leadership in this vote that's about to happen here in just a couple hours. But we also want to be very clear. Once this vote happens and goes to the Senate, we are expecting the Senate to take this vote up. And Leader Thune needs to do the right thing by the survivors and call for a vote immediately. In addition to that, we want to make it very clear to the President. He has been fighting this vote for months. After saying that he would release the files during the campaign, after his Attorney General said the files were on her desk, he then flip-flops and has been doing everything in his power to stop the release of the files and stop justice for the survivors of Jeffrey Epstein's horrific sexual trafficking ring. But now the President, seeing a loss in the House, has flip-flopped. We're not going to forget his opposition. And we need to be clear-eyed that this new investigation that he has launched is likely another way of trying to stop the release of the files to the Congress, to the public, and for justice for the women and girls who have been fighting on this issue every day. I want to remind the President as well that he has the power to release the files today. He has the power to release the files without a vote. In fact, a few months ago, the Oversight Committee put in place a subpoena for all of the files through the Department of Justice, and still they have released nothing. And so at the end of the day, Donald Trump today can bring justice for the survivors, and he refuses to do so. It's important, and this is a message directly to Leader Thune. He needs to understand that this issue is bigger than what we're just doing here in the Congress. There are millions of girls and women that are watching our actions across the country and the world. There are millions that are survivors themselves of sexual abuse. There are millions that are being abused in their workplace or in their home. And they're watching us and asking, will our government, will our leaders actually do anything about this abuse? or are they going to continue to hide and protect the men and abusers at the highest levels of government and power? And if the Epstein survivors who were abused by the most powerful cannot get justice, how can the millions of women and survivors across the country and world expect justice for themselves? And so this is a very important moment for the country. And lastly, I'll say this. I'm often asked, what's next? This is directly from the survivors, and I've been talking to them pretty regularly, including one just 2 days ago. They have all asked us to look where they believe the truth is, and that is in the financial and bank records of the most powerful financial institutions in this country that have the information and where the money was transferred from those powerful men who paid and were involved in the trafficking of these girls. So if you are the president of a bank, if you are a leader of a financial organization, and you are hiding information as it relates to justice for these women, the Oversight Committee is coming after those documents. Thank you.
Thank you so much for those remarks. Next up, we have Representative Kelly Morrison. Please join me in welcoming her to the podium.
Good morning. I'm Kelly Morrison, Congresswoman from Minnesota's 3rd District. It's good to be here with all of you this morning on this incredibly important day. Thank you so much to the Sexual Violence Prevention Association for bringing us together. So much gratitude to Teresa for being here today. Your bravery, selflessness, and advocacy are truly remarkable. Your courage to speak out and stand up for others is the only reason we are in this position today, finally able to try and bring the justice and transparency that is far too long overdue. And thank you to the Sexual Violence Prevention Association for delivering this letter today, bringing nearly 50 organizations dedicated to ending child abuse, sexual violence, and human trafficking together to call on Congress to pass the Epstein Files Transparency Act and demand the release of the files. Because that is exactly what today is about. Standing up against child abuse, sexual violence, and human trafficking. Today is an opportunity for us to send an important message here in DC, across the country, and across the world. Today is our opportunity to say, no matter who you are, no matter how rich you are, no matter how powerful you are not above the law. No amount of money, power, connections, or corruption can buy you a free pass to abuse children or sell human beings. For decades, the government and people in power have been complicit in covering up the horrific abuses of Jeffrey Epstein and Ghislaine Maxwell. Today, we will say no more. The time has come for the victims and survivors to get the justice and the transparency they are asking for and deserve. The time has come for the perpetrators to be held accountable. The time has come for the corrupt leaders who were complicit in facilitating this to be exposed. The time has come for the American people to get the transparency they have demanded. And we have to ask ourselves, if we don't get this right, if we don't release the files and bring justice to the victims and hold the perpetrators accountable, what message would that send? Today marks a new day. Today we say this will no longer stand. We are putting the rich and powerful on notice. We are saying you cannot and will not get away with exploitation and abuse. There is nothing more deeply American than the notion that everyone has equal rights under the law. And today we are reasserting our rights as Americans. I met with survivors of Jeffrey Epstein and Ghislaine Maxwell alongside members of the Democratic Women's Caucus earlier this fall. Their stories are harrowing. Their testimony is powerful. Their bravery is unmatched. We have seen the lengths the rich and powerful will go to cover up their crimes. But these women are putting everything on the line simply to ensure that we never allow this to happen to anyone else ever again. So today, every single member of the U.S. House of Representatives will go on record to say whether they will be complicit in a cover-up protecting pedophiles and the corrupt, rich, and powerful, or if they stand on the side of justice, truth, transparency, and the American people. It should not be lost, however, that the only reason we are having to take this vote is because the Trump administration is refusing to comply with the subpoena and release the files. The president and his administration are legally required to release the files to Congress and could do so today. They could have released them at any time since he was sworn in. Not only has he refused to comply with the subpoena, he and the Speaker of the House have tried to block the release of the files at every turn, going so far as to shut down the House of Representatives for more than a month. But Americans understand that this is simply not a partisan issue. This is about our very humanity. I hope to see this pass with a unanimous vote in the House today, and I expect the Senate to take it up immediately and pass it with the support of every single senator. And then the president must sign it into law and finally release the files so that the survivors can finally get the justice that they have been denied for far too long. It is truly the very least that we can do. Thank you.
Thank you. That was very powerful. Please join me in welcoming Fatima Goss Graves, President of the National Women's Law Center Action Fund.
Thank you so much. And as she said, I'm Fatima Goss Graves. I'm president of the National Women's Law Center Action Fund, and I want to begin with deep gratitude to the survivors who have given us the gift of their stories and who have persisted in the face of a lot of resistance. I also lead the National Women's Law Center's Time's Up Legal Defense Fund, which helps to support thousands of survivors of sexual harassment and violence. And in our time running that fund, we've seen a lot. Each week, we've seen survivors who have stories of powerful men using their influence to create harm and to escape accountability. And we've also seen the many ways that survivors risk everything to simply tell their story and get the justice that they deserve. Jeffrey Epstein and Ghislaine Maxwell, they were predators. They used money and connection to exploit and silence and terrorize young women for gratification of Jeffrey Epstein and his friends. But we know abusers are often enabled by individuals and enabled by networks who allow violence to occur and continue and who ensure silence and shame. 6 years after his death, survivors and the American people are still demanding answers about those who participated in covering up the rape and abuse of children. And in fact, we've seen a whole of government approach from the president to the Department of Justice to Speaker Johnson, who have all tried to use their power to prevent the truth from coming out. So it's up to all of us to ensure that none of this is swept under the rug any longer. This isn't politics, this is about justice. And anyone suggesting otherwise is ignoring the reality of what these young women endured at the hands of these men. And, you know, I have to say, as a leader in the fight for gender justice today, I would not have imagined in this time that I would be speaking with the same voice as some of the members who've joined in support of the discharge petition. We disagree strongly on many, many issues, and today we are able to all come together and demand the release of information on abuse, especially those who currently hold positions of power. And we agree that people across this country, they deserve to know. Democracy and transparency are worth fighting for. Justice for survivors are worth fighting for. And holding the powerful accountable here, it is worth fighting for. So for the survivors who so bravely came forward, our task is to ensure that nothing like this happens again, and that starts with the Epstein Files Transparency Act. It is the only way, as you have heard, to release all of the records and to ensure accountability that the survivors and that the American people have been calling for. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Next up, please join me in welcoming Jenna Sherman, Campaign Director for Ultraviolet.
Thank you so much, Omni, for the kind introduction. What an absolute gift and honor to be here with all of you today. My name is Jenna Sherman. I'm a campaign director for gender justice organization Ultraviolet Action. I'm also a survivor and a rape crisis counselor. Ultraviolet Action is so incredibly proud to be one of the 47 organizations, 48 total, I think, signed on in support of passing the Epstein Files Transparency Act. We are deeply grateful to our fellow organizations for staying steadfast in the fight to release all files, even amidst pathetic feet dragging and finger pointing. We are deeply grateful to House leadership and many of the representatives who have spoken today and who couldn't be here for tuning out the noise and doing what is right. And above all, we are deeply grateful for and in awe of every single survivor abused at the hands of pedophiles Jeffrey Epstein and Ghislaine Maxwell. Your bravery, your resilience, and conviction are changing our political reality. Your power is palpable and it is unstoppable. At Ultraviolet, we are so fortunate to work with powerful survivors every single day. And we know that sexual violence is a major health epidemic, one that is far too common and touches all of us. That's right, all of us. Abusers and survivors can be from any political party, ideology, religion, or belief system. That's why we have come together today as a powerful bipartisan coalition to demand accountability for every powerful man and woman, regardless of background or political party, who partook in or enabled Epstein and Maxwell's abusive and criminal enterprise in any way. If there are sexual predators out there grooming and sexually exploiting kids and teenagers, and yes, newsflash, teenagers are children, we the public must know. These abusers are rich, they are powerful, and in many cases they are controlling parts of our country. But we are here to make loud and clear that they are not above the law and that they must pay the price for their crimes. These perpetrators losing their jobs and reputation is nothing compared to the mental and spiritual anguish experienced by the over 1,000 survivors whose lives were irrevocably altered, some of whom we have heartbreakingly lost to suicide. There are real, lifelong consequences, even intergenerational consequences, to experiencing sexual abuse, and especially child sexual abuse. And we are done with those consequences being used as a political football with zero accountability. The only path to truth and justice is to pass the Epstein Files Transparency Act in the House and Senate. Only then can abusers be held accountable. Only then can we get the transparency that we need and deserve. And hopefully then, survivors can begin to truly heal. Thank you so much.
Awesome. Thank you, truly. Thank you to every member of Congress who is pushing for the truth, to every nonprofit leader standing with us, and most of all to the survivors who continue to show extraordinary courage and resilience. You are the reason we are here. Your strength is what makes this fight possible. Thank you to the 47 organizations who joined our letter. This coalition proves that when survivors lead, the nation must follow. Let me make one final call. Congress must pass the Epstein Files Transparency Act. The American public deserves the full truth. Survivors deserve justice, transparency, and accountability. Preventing the sexual violence epidemic in our country requires addressing this egregious harm and uprooting the systems and institutions that permitted and concealed it. Our democracy depends on our willingness to confront this head on. With that, we will now take about 5 minutes of questions.
Yes. You called today a milestone, not the finish line. What happens next if the DOJ doesn't follow through, if the act is passed to get you to this finish line of transparency?
You know, we're seeing, I mean, this is a demand from the nation, from people. It's not a partisan issue. So many people, regardless of political ideology, want to see what is in these files. Trump promised that on day one, when he was elected, he was going to release the information, and here we are stuck. And my concern truly is that with this, partisan sort of launching of investigation of just Democrats that are implicated, that will hold up in some way the release of the full files. And so I do think that we have to look at that for sure. Yes. Yes.
Rep Ro Khanna believes that Prince Andrew was subpoenaed to speak before Congress. I'm just wondering if you agree with that, and whether you think that the UK government and the royal family should cooperate to ensure that that happens.
I think really any way that we can get more transparency and more justice for the survivors, we need to utilize every avenue. So if Prince Andrew has information that would be beneficial to Congress, then we should utilize that avenue. Well, I mean, if the leadership that has been working on this issue much longer than I have believe that he has insightful information, then we should utilize that option. Yeah. Yes. Oh, I'm sorry.
Speaker John Trump today called for legal to amend the Transparency Act. He listed 5 things, laws, he says, in it, including to protect victims and whistleblowers enough. What's your reaction to that, and do you think this is just another delaying tactic?
I believe it's another delaying tactic. I do think that the Transparency Act really covers that information and trying to protect survivors. And so, again, my concern is that there continues to be this resistance in releasing information that the public is demanding, because survivors are demanding it. And they need to be able to move forward and begin this healing process. And every turn that this administration takes in trying to prevent the full information from getting out is just another ploy to hold on and protect, pedophiles and protect people in power. Yeah. Good.
It's just been revealed that Congresswoman Stacey Plaskett was actually texting with Jeffrey Epstein during a hearing. I know you're new here, welcome. But what is your response to that? And should Democrats move to censure her, saying she was texting with a convicted child sex offender?
I have no information about that. I can't verify that information, and so I'd rather not speak on it.
Happy to follow up on that.
Yeah, thank you. All right.
We're all good?
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Absolutely. Thank you. Thank you so much for all of your work on this.
Thank you for being here. I'm sorry, this was such a whirlwind. Yes, thank you. I really appreciate you guys being here. I was going to say my dad and I
Literally practice.
It's a good one. It's a good one.
You gotta be a good snapper in organizing work.
Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Let me get it.
Wait, show, can you do it?
Yeah, you go.
I'm like, I'm sorry, I heard.
I know, you've got places to be.
Here, Joe, you can go right out in front. Get in there. Yeah, this is for us. Thanks, sweetie.
Can we get one behind the Epstein
files? Oh, yeah, you're actually so right. We should have just done that originally.
Nate, is that a good angle for my chins? Thank you. Since it's for us. I hate when they come down under.
I know.
What are we doing? No, when they're like, oh, is everyone's favorite angle this? I'm like, it's absolutely not that, actually.
Like, no one looks good.
Go higher off it on steps and they're below you.
All right. Oh, my goodness. Thank you. Do you want to? Wait, here, I'm taking my.